All right, here we go. Episode number 59 of Sports Cards Live on this wonderful COVID Halloween 2020. Welcome, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to thank the last couple of guests that we had on Sports Cards Live. Last Saturday was Steve Menzie and Mitch Adelstein from the Virtual Expo, which is happening November 21st and 22nd at sportcardexpo.com. Check that out. Want to thank them. We had a great show. Chatted a lot about the upcoming show and what it's all going to look like. So check out that episode if you want to learn more about the upcoming Virtual Expo. Also want to thank my guest from this past Wednesday was Joel Alpert, live from Joel's car. That was a ton of fun. One of the more unique episodes we've had so far on Sports Cards Live. So check that out. It was an awesome conversation. He goes way back in the hobby, has a lot of experience. So that was really cool. Welcome anyone who's new to the show tonight. Thank you for joining us. Really cool. Almost at 1,400 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please go ahead and do so. Of course, your questions, your comments are in play tonight. We have two guests joining us tonight. We have Karn Rye, who is one of my go-to Pokemon experts. I actually learned a lesson. I got advice from him that I didn't follow, and now I regret that. We'll talk about that during the show. And also joining with us tonight is Corey, also very well known as Yamwax. And I was expecting him to be 30 to 60 minutes late, but he is here with us already. So we're going to have everybody right from the beginning. So that should be pretty exciting. And then, of course, later on tonight, we're going to have the After Hours show. Joining me will be Ralph, and Corey will be coming back for that as well. So looking forward to that. I've got a whole bunch of cards that have come in that I haven't opened yet. These came from my US mailing address, and I am considering opening them during After Hours and seeing what all is in there. So we'll see how that goes. But let's bring out, and I see we got a bunch in here already. So thanks everybody for joining us. I am going to now bring out Karn Rye. Karn, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey guys, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us tonight. You are my Pokemon go-to. And let's bring out Corey. Corey, welcome.
Happy Halloween, everybody. Doing great, guys. Hi, Karn. An honor to be on here with you guys. And I just want to say that I've had my fill of chocolate and peanut blossoms, and I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, I see you. You're dressed up as the Unabomber with the hood down, Karn. I'm not sure what you're dressed up as, just Karn, and I'm dressed up as a dork for tonight for Halloween. So here we go.
Missed opportunity to dress up as Pikachu and Brock and Ash Ketchum. So
Corey's playing with Corey. What?
I did bring a costume. Never, always imitated, never duplicated. Jeremy Lee. Sorry, guys. I'll turn that off.
Oh my God, that was too funny. I wasn't expecting that, Corey. I was not expecting that, but nice surprise. Good planning. I love it. All right. So guys, we are having our Pokemon themed episode. And as the audience knows, again, Karn is somebody that's been on with me before. We've talked about Pokemon. Karn's also a sports card guy. Corey has a great presence on Instagram and came into Pokemon one way or another. We'll learn a bit about that, and is becoming another go-to Pokemon expert for me, and at least to lean on when I have questions or want to understand something. Before we jump in and start getting into our agenda for this evening, fellas, let's just say hello to who we have with us tonight watching. We have Global Sports Card Investor, and that message came in about half an hour ago. So great to have you with us tonight. Rondell Rosado, happy Halloween to you. Thanks. Yeah, / pink sugary goodness. That reminds me of the bubble gum that we used to chew as kids. Yes, wouldn't that be nice for sure. Dustin, welcome to the show, guys. Check out Dustin's YouTube channel, The Personal Finance Dad. Ziggy's in the house. Happy Halloween to you. Check out Ziggy Knows Sports Cards Daily. Bill, welcome to the show. Terry, good to see you. Paul Cashman, Tim Marin, Dominic, welcome to the show. Happy Halloween to Yam and Karn. There we go. Tiger Jordan, happy to have you here with us. Adam Lefko is with us tonight for the first time, I believe. Welcome to the show, Adam Lefko. Yeah, Yamwax is the tech god. Ask Karn if he regrets buying the LeBron SBA. I don't know who you are. Anybody who's with us right now and you are on Facebook, I'm going to throw this up right now. Go to StreamYard.com/Facebook. Click that big blue button. You only ever have to do it once, and then we can interact with you on a more intimate and direct level, which I would greatly appreciate. Yamwax with the broad legendary collection. Yamwax has some good stuff, and we'll get into that. His approach to the hobby is one that I really admire, and it's he's fast moving. The guy is very nimble on his feet, and I think it's worked out well for him. Okay, guys. So listen, you're the experts. I am not. I have, like I've told you both, I think I have 13 or 14 Pokemon cards in my collection. I bought my first ones in July. You guys have been at it for longer. You know, I want to, because Karn, the audience knows you. You've been on with me twice. Corey, I want to actually, and I know you're joining, you were supposed to join later. I'm glad you came on time. That's a great surprise. But I want you to start, Corey. Tell us how you got into Pokemon. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I consider myself lucky that I jumped in 2018. I know a lot of people got in much earlier and have been writing this for a long time, and I've learned so much from them. But so my son, he kept bugging me saying, hey, my buddies have really, really cool Pokemon cards, and I want to go to a shop and find cards because the ones we bought from the store, I didn't really know what I was buying. I'd grab him a tin or something, and they weren't the ones he wanted. And so I said, well, let's just go to a shop. I know there's some shops around, and most of those shops were combination sports and Pokemon stores, to be honest, and various things, Magic and everything. So we stopped in, and well, he was there, you know, looking through all the Pokemon cards. I'm getting re-engaged then in sports cards. This is around 2018, and that actually pulled me into sports cards where I started out. But then, you know, I love connecting with my kids. And as I started to learn about vintage Pokemon, just through some random happenstance, I just like, hey, buddy, we should collect these older cards. And then we started looking for first edition cards everywhere, and I got sucked in. You know, I'm a huge fan of history and art, and Pokemon has that in spades, and I got soaked into it, and some of this really just speaks to me. And the community is terrific. So my son and I now collect especially basketball and Pokemon together. And then I've branched out, as you guys have probably seen, in all kinds of sports. But I've really become very engaged personally on my personal collection of Pokemon on the vintage side. I love the pre-99 Japanese, as well as, you know, the early sets from the USA. So guys like Karn led the way for me.
Yeah, that's really cool that you're into the vintage. And you know, what's really nice is something you reached out to me about a week ago, and you said, I'm going to send you a starter pack of these vintage Japanese Pokemon cards. I thought, well, that's wonderful. I mean, thank you. I can't wait to check these out. You sent me a video describing them. I can't wait to receive them. I think it's really cool. And I'm hoping that, you know, one or two of them actually become, you know, that they maybe help me focus or drive towards building a small collection of these vintage pieces that started off this whole Pokemon brand and the game and the hobby, really. So thanks for that. I'm excited for that. And yeah, so to me, you're my vintage Pokemon expert now, Corey, which is really cool.
I'm happy to, and I just want to say that I really appreciate your show and all that you're bringing to the hobby. And when I saw your episode with Karn and you showed off some of your grabs that you made over the summer, I could see a little spark there, Jeremy. I could see that there was an opportunity for enthusiasm, and I thought, why don't I introduce you to some of the vintage and get that starter pack? So
you're my pusher, Corey. You're my pusher, and you know, yeah, and it's true. You know, I'm a sports card guy through and through, but as you know, I think sports cards collectors / investors, we keep our eyes to the ground. We keep them peeled for opportunities. And I think we're more willing to kind of meander into the other genres, and that's sort of what I did. Now, it's not going to, you know, it might be 5% of my hobby. It's not going to be a significant component of it, at least right now. I think I probably had said in the past at some point, I'll never own a Pokemon card. So I've already gone against that. Now, if I say I'm going to have you know, have them take up a bigger percentage of my collection or my hobby time, maybe I'll be wrong on that too, but I don't think so. Let's turn to you for a second now, Karn. So I want to talk, Karn, with you. What I do on the show now is I do what I call the Sports Cards Live 5, where I ask 5 questions at the end of the episode to my guests. I haven't really planned that with you guys for this show, but with you, I do want to start talking about what was one of your biggest regrets that you either purchased or a purchase or a sale regret that you made. Because we talked earlier, and this is a phenomenal story. So I'm going to let you talk for a few minutes here, Karn, and talk about that. Explain to us this recent event with this particular transaction you were involved in, and take us all the way through that if you can, starting with the regret.
Yeah, so I think my biggest regret, it's an unfortunate circumstance, but I was getting into Pokemon trophy cards earlier in the year. And what that is are basically cards that are given out to winners of certain tournaments and contests by the Pokemon Company from as early as 1996, and they still do it till this day. And one of the biggest and most iconic trophy cards is called the Pikachu Illustrator card. And this card showed up on a Japanese marketplace about 3 or 4 months ago. And my partner and I have to convince him because I'm the Pokemon guy. He kind of just he gives deference to me when it comes to Pokemon. And I said, we have to pick this up. This card is the crown jewel of a collection. And the bad part is on this Japanese platform, you actually have to wire the money to the platform initially before you can actually even purchase the card. So it has to get wired in and deposited into the platform, and you have to click buy it now at that point when the money is in the account. So we went ahead and did it. It showed up on a Thursday. The next morning, we wired the money. It got into the account the following Monday, and we went to click buy it now. It was the price was 20 million yen. I think that's the correct conversion. It ended up being about 220,000 US dollars. So we wired that over. We clicked buy it now, and we were excited. We were celebrating. Like, we got this big card. And then about an hour later, we get an email that we came in second place. And we actually weren't first, and we're not getting the card. So I guess the regret there was we didn't send the bank wire a couple hours earlier than we could have, because now we don't have that card, and I doubt we're ever getting one, because it's definitely up there in price now after all the spikes that has occurred in the market.
So yeah, that's the, because I was chatting with you earlier and I said, man, if you only wired that money the day before, like never mind an hour earlier, just reasonably, practically speaking, a day earlier, if you initiated this sequence of events one day earlier, you would have won the purchase. You would have won the right to buy that card. But what's interesting is that that's not the end of the story. So okay, so you didn't get the card. You guys were a little upset about it, but now you've got the money back. What came next? What happened next?
So yeah, we got the money back, and we were all bummed out because we didn't get the conversion fees from yen to US dollars. We lost about $8,000 on that attempt to buy the Pikachu Illustrator. And I love Pokemon cards, and I just love the artwork, and that's why I wanted the Pikachu Illustrator. But next on my list of an artifact in Pokemon history was the first edition booster box. So my partner and I decided that is what we're going to go after. And we started looking around. We couldn't find one. And then we saw a heritage auction that was going to occur shortly. And that is the box that Logan Paul ended up winning. But midway through that auction, we actually found and sourced the box out of Instagram from a prominent Pokemon collector, and that deal went very smoothly. And essentially, that loss on that Pikachu Illustrator led to us buying that first edition booster box, which then, of course, then the next story begins.
So you don't get the Pikachu Illustrator, which I've heard of the Pikachu Illustrator card before, but I didn't know what it was. You explained it to me. There was a contest in 1996, and people got to basically draw or create their own Pokemon character, send it into the Pokemon, whatever was the Wizards of the Coast or the Japanese Pokemon Company, whoever they were, and they chose the winners, and 36 of these cards were awarded. And so only 36,
something along those lines, yeah.
39.
So a small number were created, and the population in terms of how they're graded it is what it is. But you were going after one of these cards, you didn't get it, you got your money back, and then you ended up purchasing a booster box. Okay, tell us about this booster box, and let's also talk about this whole. So I think the audience, you may or may not know, and I'm not going to be the one to tell the story. Actually, why don't you tell it, Karn, just sort of what happened with in this whole situation. It's a bit of a messy situation. There are some issues that came out of this, but explain what happened, and and I'll just give a bit of an intro, is that there's a very popular YouTube channel called Dumb Money, and these guys, I don't know, I haven't watched any of their videos, but they wanted to purchase an unopened box of first edition booster and open it live and have, kind of recreate what Logan Paul did a few weeks ago. Tell us what happened with that.
Yeah, so I think I'll start the story off with when we obtained the box. First edition Pokemon was released on the West Coast primarily. So WotC, Wizard of the Coast. It started off in the Seattle area and went down the West Coast. So we actually found this box that we had in the West Coast, very near Seattle. And there's a lot of due diligence done on the box. It was weighed, it was checked, how the seal was and things of that nature. So I was very confident that our box was an authentic box. It looked absolutely phenomenal. The chain of custody and the provenance of the box was phenomenal. So I was always confident in it. And we wanted to hold it for 10 years, honestly. And then we saw the whole spike in Pokemon happen. And at that point, things got very crazy in terms of the price hikes of the box and Charizards, for example. So we really wanted to hold it. But then about October 14th or 15th, around there, someone by the name of Collectibles Guru messaged us on Instagram and asked if we would be willing to sell our booster box. And at that time, I said, I'm looking for about $400K if I'm going to sell it at this point. And I thought it was so out of reach, like no one was actually going to buy it at that price. And he's like, all right, I'll keep you guys in mind. And I saw that he just bought another box about a week earlier, which was not sourced from us, but for someone else. So I figured he was probably buying a second box. Then about a couple of days later, he comes back to me and he says, all right, how about 375? We can get it done. And here it is. Like, if you can let me give you a deposit for $10,000, we can pick up the box from you guys in a week, right? So I didn't know anything about Dumb Money Live at that point. He basically scheduled us in, like, oh, he's going to pick up the box at whatever it was, like October 27th is when the deal was supposed to happen. And anyways, we confirmed the deal. And then the next day, I see an article like showing up that Dumb Money Live has purchased the biggest record-breaking price box in Pokemon history. So I messaged Collectibles Guru. I'm like, oh, is this our box that's being talked about? And he's like, no, it's not. We actually have the one box we had in inventory, and we decided to sell that to Dumb Money Live, and your box was just a personal inventory replenishment for themselves. So they would just wanted to have a box when they sell their box, right? And fast forward to the day that Dumb Money Live got that initial first box. A little bit of a confusing story, but yeah, they got their initial first box. They opened up live, and it ended up being a resealed fake box that came from Philadelphia from a different seller that wasn't us, and it became a contentious issue. It was like a huge deal, obviously very controversial, and it was a $375,000 deal. It was shown on YouTube Live, and they opened it up, and it had the story of the box was that it was stuck in a closet for 20 years, but they opened it and there's packs with 2020 energies in it. So it was obviously resealed this year. So then it becomes contentious, like who did the scamming? Was it Collectibles Guru, or was it the seller of the first box? And this is all live on a pretty prominent YouTube channel. And things got a little bit even more suspicious for the outsider, because Collectible Guru is like, all right, we actually have another box ready to go tomorrow. And the Pokemon market was kind of like, this is such a rare box. How are you able to source another box so quickly? And the truth was, they already planned it and scheduled that they were going to come get the box from us the day after, prior to us even knowing anything about Dumb Money Live. So it kind of they got screwed out of their first box, of course, and that's super unfortunate. But fortunately, they actually did have that backup plan, which worked out for themselves. So they picked up our box, which was also shown live on Dumb Money. They went to my partner's house, actually, in Baltimore, met his family, his kids, we were so confident that our box was legit. There was like black light testing done, and shout out to the people that we bought the box from, because I was like, so confident that they know what they were doing as well. And yeah, they checked out the box, opened it up, packs were completely legit, and everything was super immaculate. And the next day, I went back to Dumb Money Live, and then they did another verification, which was yesterday actually. Weighed all the packs, made sure all packs were hollows, because 12 out of the 36 packs are hollows in a first edition booster box, and that's how the deal occurred. So there's a lot of steps and a lot of things that occurred during that deal. But yeah, we ended up providing the record-breaking first edition booster box price for first edition Pokemon.
Well, that's a huge sale. I mean, anytime you make a sale in the hobby for $375,000, that's it's really, that's huge, man. So congratulations on that. That's pretty, and
thank you.
And kudos for I guess having an authentic first edition box. And this whole thing that happened with Dumb Money Live and Collectibles Guru, and neither of the people I don't know who these guys are. I think I follow Collectibles Guru on Instagram, but this event of the fake box or the resealed box, the unauthentic box, it's brought to light some issues and some concerns in the hobby, in the Pokemon genre within the hobby, in terms of the authenticity of unopened boxes, and people, I think, maybe becoming more concerned, and maybe they'll do a little bit more due diligence as they move forward. Corey, we chatted about this also, and you're keeping on top of this. You're a guy who, you're out there, you're watching the market, you're seeing what are you seeing? What do you think the impact of this scandal, if you will, is having or has had on the Pokemon hobby and a lot of the long time dedicated collectors out there?
Mm-hmm. After that initial box on Dumb Money, there was fear across the entire hobby. And I want to say that it didn't exclusively apply to Pokemon. When it came to sealed product, there were a lot of people sweating bullets about their product. And I'm sure some people, continue to have their concerns, and they always do to some degree. But I would like to actually, on behalf of the hobby, issue a thank you to Karn and your partner for doing amazing due diligence, seriously. Because if that backup box turned out to be problematic, it really would have created some level of panic, I believe. And so you guys really, I think, calmed things down a few degrees, where now it can become just a conscious conversation about, okay, what do we do going forward? Karn, you were on a live stream this week, and you and the gentleman were talking about how important it is for any of us who open boxes to try to mark that box, put an X on the box, put an opened on the bottom of the box, so that going forward, people can't reseal that box without erasing that mark. And so different people started immediately trying to come up with solutions, but at the same time, what do I do to verify that my box is legitimate? Should there be third-party people to verify those, put the tamper-proof sealing on them and so on? And I know, Karn, you've had some of those conversations. I'd be curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think it's just a liability issue for the companies that want to get involved with authenticating boxes, because when you're talking about a $375,000 box, and if you authenticate it and it turns out to be fake down the line, it's a big liability issue, right? So I think that's what's contentious about it, but definitely there has to be some sort of progress in that sense.
Do you think before a sale happens that sometimes people will open their boxes before they even ship it, film that, and then deliver the box afterwards?
Yeah, I think that's. See, there's a silver lining to what happened in this occurrence with Dumb Money Live, right? What it did was create that dialogue with everyone in the market, that if you're buying a big box, you're gonna have to do immense due diligence, especially if you're buying a first edition booster box. And it might be a good idea to open the boxes, and then the market has to accept that an authenticator may have to open a box and reseal the box with their own wrapping, and that should be the confidence standard, right? So I think that does open the dialogue. I don't think we're going to get there like in the short term, but hopefully down the line there is some sort of authenticating service that makes this possible.
I love the idea of marking the boxes after you open them as open or something like that. I think that's something that should catch on industry wide, hobby, cardboard wide, not just in Pokemon. Obviously, that's a great thing. And now all of a sudden, if a box comes that doesn't have it, now you've gotten past that first step of, okay, it doesn't have the mark. So now what do we do to take precautions past that? And I guess there are ways to do that. So that's pretty cool. I want to just go back to the comments for a minute. Welcome Malone Money Mindset, also a YouTube channel that I watch. So check him out. Ziggy wants to know, Corey, where did the name Yam Wax come from?
All right. Ziggy, I see you all over the place, man. And I'm happy to share this with you. So Yam Wax, obviously not my real name. My real name's Corey, but I happily go by Yam in the hobby. I needed to put an Instagram name out there really quickly. And when I'm in a hurry for something, I give myself sometimes 20, or not in a hurry, but I just want to make a decision without overthinking it. I give myself 20 minutes to come up with something. So I just wrote a bunch of information, a bunch of words that I thought were words I enjoy about sports and the hobby. And one of those words on the left-hand side of my column was yam, which is actually my favorite basketball slang term, like to yam on somebody. Not that I want to dunk on anybody in the hobby, but I love that it also means to chat and to converse. And that's a huge thing for me, making connections and being able to talk about our cards. So yam was like a no-brainer. I circled that on the left side, nice and short too. And the other side, I just had a bunch of words related to the hobby. I don't really do a lot of sealed wax myself, but wax went really well with yam, and it's kind of a funny name. And I only had 20 minutes, so I threw it together, and the handles were available, and it's memorable, and it's weird, and I have fun with it. I think wax, to me also means like to philosophize or to come up with your own opinions, to wax poetic, if you will. Yeah. So, chatting, coming up with our own takes on things, and having fun.
And it's nice and short too. 6 letters, a nice easy handle to have. So, okay, there we go. I asked him that question when I first met him too. So I think inquiring minds want to know. Joe, welcome to the show. Happy Halloween to you. Dennis, good to have you back for the second time. Oh, I've been watching some older shows. Great stuff. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Richard, hello to you. C. Eddie B, welcome to the show. You don't know anything about Pokemon, but look forward to learning. Hey, man, join the club. I'm learning as we go as well. Ziggy says, where there is money, there will be fraud. I'm hearing there are lots of resealed packs of products on eBay. That's been an issue for a long time. Is there a BBC equivalent for Pokemon, a trusted third party to validate? Karn, what do you say to that? Is BBCE the third party for that, or?
BBCE, speculation, but I heard that they don't want to touch Pokemon at all. But there is no equivalent at this time for Pokemon.
Okay, Corey,
I imagine there's a lot of plans being hatched, that there are people incubating that idea right now, but I haven't heard of any specific group.
Okay, Steve, welcome. What does Ziggy say? Be happy the fake box was open on a live stream. Imagine if you didn't have the proof. Yeah, that for sure. Billy, what are the legal obligations for selling a box you believe to be real and not tampered with that ends up being fake? Would it start with a domino effect of litigation? We're not lawyers, so we're not going to get into that right now. Very cool story, Yamax. Love the name. Thank you. Global, good to see you back. Dwayne, my kid is big into Pokemon. What could I buy him that is worth something? Well, that's a pretty open-ended question, but I think it's a good one because we can pose the question. We'll put this to you first, Corey. If you are a brand new collector and you want to target one card, or it's Christmas coming up, you want to buy a card for somebody, what would be a start off card? And I mean, I guess the amount of money that you have available is going to help answer this question. But let's say $200. Is there something that comes to mind for you that you would? You've already taken the step of sending me a care package of like a starter set for the vintage Japanese stuff. But if you were to send a card to somebody as a gift right now to try and get them into the hobby, what do you think you would send them? Does something pop into your mind quickly?
Sure. At $200, there is what? Again, that's a tough amount for sure, where the hobby's flying right now. One that pops into mind initially, anything Pikachu and Charizard is absolutely iconic in the hobby. I think Pikachu just reaches through to everybody. So I'm looking at maybe a a lower grade, maybe even like an 8 or a 9 of a Pikachu Japanese. Of course, that's my first love, but something that's I don't think you get anything shadowless or unlimited for that amount. So it's taking a look at maybe one of, you know what, there's really, really cool promos. You could probably get like a Pikachu promo where I'm trying to think of which one. I've got one here. It's a scratch promo. This was a 9.5 that I got for $100. And there's these Black Star promos that are really interesting. So maybe look for something in that in a 9 or a 10, because you've got an iconic card. You've got a special card in that it was released as a promo card. And, you know, go out and search for Pikachu promo, and you could probably find something cool.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to that, Karn, that you would advise? Who asked the question? Dwayne, in terms of something he could buy for his kid?
Yeah, I think you got to remember when you're opening packs. Like as for me, like when I'm opening packs when I was 10 years old or 7 years old in 1999, I was chasing the Charizard. I really liked Blastoise, and those are the cards that ended up being worth something. It's because as collectors, and what gives you that nostalgic feeling is that cycle starts when you grow up and you're an adult and you have money. That's the card you're going to go for. So I think the best way to figure this out is ask your kid, ask him which card today is the one that makes you feel this excitement when you're opening the packs, because they know much more than us about what makes them excited about cards today. And I think that is the card that you should go after, because that's the card that's going to give people feelings in the future.
Yeah, well,
that's a great call, Karn. Could I also just add to that? Like, it might be that your child would want a tin, because if you want to really hook them into it, when you pull your first, you know, really special card out of a tin or ETB, an Elite Trainer box, those are like the squarish box things that you see in the Target aisles, and do your research, get the best ones you can, Hidden Fates, Champions Path, and so on. But it might be that they want to pull something really cool and have the experience of a box break. I do get a lot of questions from people. I want to put something away for my kid, to put away for maybe 16 years to give to them someday. So it's a different question, kind of depending on what you're looking for. But Karn's absolutely right. My middle school daughter, who hasn't ever played Pokemon, isn't really interested in the game or the cards. She knows all the characters and absolutely has a favorite. So.
Okay, good stuff. And, you know, Dwayne does post right recently, what about boxes? And I think you just spoke to that. So, Dwayne, I hope that helps you out. I found that interesting myself for sure. Ziggy says it's a memorable name. There's only one Yamwax in the hobby. That's for sure. It is a memorable name. I think you did really well with that one, Corey. Okay, Rich says, what about Shining Magikarp? Lots of following for Magikarps. We'll just keep going. Boston Earth, sports scalpers are taking over and grabbing every Pokemon product in the retail space. We see a lot of talk about that with sports cards right now. So not really surprising that when a sports card collector / investor sees opportunity, that they're going to, you know, capitalize on that or attempt to at least. Ziggy asks a good question. As a Pokemon novice, it seems like Pokemon is only Pikachu and Charizard. Are there any other names or characters to chase? And I mean, as a novice myself, Ziggy, I do, from the research I've done over the past few months, there certainly are other characters to collect and chase. And we are going to get to that in a separate topic a little bit later. Boston Irv, Shining Legends, underrated holiday set, funner than the Charizard pull. So Shining Legends is one of the Pokemon products, I believe. So there's some more advice. Okay, let's get into the program, fellas. That was kind of the intro, 35 minutes in, but you know, we put together a nice little agenda of topics, and I want to jump into that. So the first thing I think is you know, to in a bit of another intro, if you will. Corey, we chatted last night, and you made a couple comments. You said that, you know, this Pokemon thing is really taking off. There's this new wave of nostalgia. It's recently been made cool. Can you just speak to that a little bit, and how you've perceived that shift to how it's occurred over the last little while?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What I feel happening is that there is this cool factor, and I don't just mean Logan Paul, although he's really aced some of his videos and made it really, really fun. You hear about people like Justin Bieber and Logic making gigantic sales, and suddenly it's cool to flash, you know, your major pulls, whether it's a box or an individual single, a Charizard, to chase those. Gary Vee is doing it. Some of the people here in the chat that I recognize are buying Pikachus you'd never think would be, and it's from their childhood. And so there's this wave of nostalgia that people either they did collect or they maybe collected quietly and privately, and it was sort of a geeky thing to do in their mind. I would say that's true of me. I didn't ever picture myself on a podcast talking about Pikachu and Charizard, right? But and then on top of it, you have people who never collected, but they love the cards when they were kids, and they're like, this could be an asset class for me, or it could just be a fun thing to get back into. I think there are millions of people that could be unlocked via the nostalgia factor if it's made not even just cool but acceptable. And now it's at the cool level. Like, we're talking about maybe thousands of people coming in, and right when they're reaching sort of that earning time with disposable income, and you have some millennials who are becoming millionaires, and they're looking for really neat places to bury that nostalgia, and it can lead to an entire wave of collecting. And so we'll see where this goes.
How about you, Karn? I mean, it almost feels like stating the obvious, because it's getting cooler. It's becoming worth a lot more money. And what came first? Did it get cooler and then it became worth a lot of money, or did it become worth a lot of money and then it became cool? How have you seen it unfold from your perspective?
I think it's always been cool. I think in the market today, you're seeing a lot of people that are outsiders, and they're not realizing how deep and ingrained Pokemon has been in the last 25 years now. In America, it's been since 1999. But we're talking diehard collectors, and this is pieces of art for a lot of people out there. And just like how sports guys love LeBron James, there's collectors that love even guys that people don't recognize, like even Dragon Knight, someone that's super popular, but sports card guys don't really know who that character is. There's hundreds of characters just like that have a following, that people enjoy collecting, and it was always cool for them. And they're kind of the ones that have created this market. It's not something that just got created from the money. It's the value occurred because this baseline foundation was always there. And that's why I love Pokemon and what it represents, because it's a subculture that's very popular, and it transcends to people like sports card guys. And I think even outsiders that come in and look at a Pokemon card, just like you said in our last show, it just gives you this feeling of like, this is a cool item. It's shiny sometimes it looks different, but these artworks on these pieces of cardboard are just, they elicit some sort of reaction where you just want to own them. So I think definitely cool first and then value after.
All right. No, that's a great answer, because, I think a lot of the people, that it was cool for them way back. There would have been a lot of people looking in thinking it's not, it's dorky or it's geeky or something like that. But now those people have a lot of those people have a lot of discretionary income. And so they've helped to prop it up, and now it's being noticed by a lot of people, including myself, who, again, I had said in the past, I'm sure I've said in the past, I'll never own a Pokemon card. And here I do, going against that. So it's something that it's starting to really spread out and gain much more widespread attention, similar to the way sports cards are right now. They're getting mainstream attention. A lot of celebrities are collecting them, and it seems like both of these genres are growing sort of in tandem, if you will. So really interesting stuff. Boston Irv says, may I ask Corey what his favorite underrated set is? Burning Shadow, Shining Legends, love the Cosmic Eclipse art. So Corey, to you, what is your favorite underrated set? And Karn, feel free to jump in with your thought on this as well.
Yeah, I would love Karn's opinion on this. I always go back to vintage, and he's clearly asking about the current sets. And I think some of these sets underrated. Boy, that's in the eye of the beholder. I actually like a lot of the mainstream sets. I'm loving Champion's Path, maybe not as quite as much as Hidden Fates. I thought Hidden Fates really brought the fire. There's really, really interesting cards, and I don't even really collect modern, but some of the ones I've seen are just brilliant. And I'll say that, but it's not underrated because it's properly rated. It's very, very popular. I like some of the early Japanese Pokemon, especially if you look at a Cardass, the original art on those and these character drawings are just gorgeous. And it's so that's one that I always think of, but I'd love to hear what Karn thinks.
Yeah, I think in terms of the more modern sets that you mentioned there, I like Burning Shadows just because the Charizard there is a hard pull and it looks really cool. It's shiny, it's rainbow. But if you asked me 2 weeks ago, what's the most underrated set, I would say something the New Genesis era, Neo Destiny, Neo Revelations. But I think those kind of sets are getting the attention now that they deserved after the first edition and base set box prices went up, the base set singles went up, and now money's kind of moving to the next step, which is second generation. But now I think it's probably Skyridge, and the reason why I like Skyridge so much, it's still a WotC product. It's the last one that they produced. And it's extremely rare. None of the boxes are going to be opened anymore. The box is really, it's an incredible scarce box, and so I don't think a lot of people are going to be opening them up. And the Charizard artwork is was voted as the second best looking Charizard out there, and I think it's like this very clean design. So I think that's one of the most underrated sets out there right now.
You're right. That Charizard is gorgeous. That
I
Skyrim
love
one is
Gold
great.
Stars too. Gold Stars are awesome as well.
Okay, so a lot of you guys watching, our sports card guys first, and we're hearing a lot of vernacular thrown around here, like WotC and Skyridge and Champions Path and all this. And I'm just gonna, because I'm a novice here, these are basically brands. It's like SP Authentic and Prism, and it's that kind of things. It's that kind of thing. Whereas WotC is an acronym for Wizards of the Coast, and they were the manufacturers behind the original Pokemon game, the Pokemon game cards, the trading cards. So we're going to get into a bit of a history lesson, if you will, about the different eras of the Pokemon cards, because it's fascinating, really. And if you follow sports cards, you understand the evolution of the different sets. If you think about basketball, you had Fleer, then you had Topps. Then you had, then you had Fleer again in the 80s and still Topps, and then everything in 1990 changed. And so I think it's interesting to draw those parallels. Before we move on, a couple more comments. Dex says, Jeremy, saw your interview with Steve Grad yesterday. Best interviewed all year I've seen. Well, thanks, Dex. Steve's a good friend of mine, so it was an easy interview to do, but I definitely appreciate that. Ziggy says, I heard the global annual revenue for Pokemon is higher than Disney. I mean, that is a monster statement, and it doesn't surprise me. My understanding that it is the biggest IP in the world, intellectual property, if anyone doesn't know what that means. Boston Irv says, Pokemon is the #1 media franchise, better than Marvel, Star Wars, Hello Kitty, etc. And this is what I want. I want to say this earlier, actually, that when we talk about Pokemon being cool, well, if there's more people in the world that know who Charizard and Pikachu are versus know who Batman and Spider-Man and Superman are, and Black Panther and everybody, and Ant-Man and all these guys, it's like, how can Pokemon really ever go away? I mean, what is its staying power? And we're going to get into that a little bit later, but I think it's a testament to just how ingrained into culture Pokemon is right now. And if you think it's a fad or a passing fancy, I think you're wrong. And I think a lot of us thought it was for the last 20 years, and here we are finally realizing no, this thing is here to stay. And by we, I mean people who weren't involved in it. So not these two guys on the screen and not some of the other people out there. Ziggy, do sets come out every year? How many? How many generations are there? Yeah, so we're going to get into that's a lot of questions there, Ziggy. We'll get to some of that. Sean, welcome to the show. Your youngest collected from 12 to 18, took care of any key card. Very smart. Turned them over to you. Any chance these newer hobby boxes will get through her school in 5 years? These hits will get through. Okay, we're going to keep on moving. Boston Irv, sets come out every quarter or so, similar to sports cards. Yeah, and then Ziggy, too many sets and generations to name. So there's a lot of information there, but at a high level, I want to talk about the different eras of the history of Pokemon cards. And so, Corey, we talked about this a bit last night, so I'll start with you on this one. I mean, can you just take us through? And then, Karn, I want you to listen because, you may have some more insights that maybe Corey doesn't have. So, Corey, can you take us through the evolution of these things? And then when that's done, we're going to bring up a graphic that Karn sent me earlier that basically shows you guys what some of the different versions look like. Ziggy, this will help you because it's going to show us some of the different versions of the same card look like, almost like parallels, if you will. So we'll get to that. But first off, with the eras, Corey, can you give us a history lesson with the different eras of the Pokemon cards?
Sure, I'll try to kick it off there. You have initially, this is a Japanese creation, right? Great artist Mitsuhiro Arita, Ken Sugimori created a lot of the early artwork that was originally on video games. It was on the Nintendo Game Boy games over there in Japan. So it started out as a game, and then competing card companies started releasing products. As early 1996 is the first official release, beating the famous Japanese base artwork that we know so well that looks just like the 1999 US Pokemon cards. Those were released in, I believe, October of 1996, but 1 month earlier, a product called Cardass was released, the 1996 Cardass set, whatever. There's all these different sets, right? There is one actually that's contentious in the hobby of whether it was the first one or not. It's the 1995 Top Sun. Many collectors believe that was the first ever set to get printed and released into the market, although its official release is 97. So some of this gets cloudy, and there were multiple other brands and products released in Japan before it hit the United States. So that 1996 Japanese set was made by Media Factory. In the United States, it was produced by WotC. So Wizards of the Coast comes to the United States. It's like Beatlemania when Pokemon launches. I remember it like crazy. And if you were lucky, you were lucky to get shadowless cards. We'll talk about some of that in a little bit. But first edition disappeared like insanely fast even back then. If you weren't lucky, you got one of these types of cards under the Christmas tree. The Topps cards. In 1999, Topps also tried to enter this market, and you would think they would be successful due to their luck in sports, but that never quite took off. That's not what most kids wanted to see. And then they continued to release, WotC continued to release products, Jungle and Fossil, and products that followed those earlier Japanese sets as well, and made multiple sets, as Karn just alluded to, until the Pokemon Company for Nintendo then took over making sets until today. So that's kind of the big picture.
So okay, I want to dive into a little bit deeper, but first I want to apologize to Sean Lindsay because when I read his question earlier, I didn't understand it, so I just went past it. But he did say any chance these newer hobby box hits will get her through school in 5 years. And again, sorry, Sean, I was reading too fast. Quickly, Karn, is there any chance that these hits from recent boxes are going to put this youngster through school in 10 years from now, let's say?
On a purely like value basis, yeah, during 2012 to 28, there are some Pokemon cards that are pretty valuable and I think very underrated. So what you would be looking for is Gold Star cards, which are a type of set. There's even not a type of set, but a subset of cards. It's called Gold Star Pokemon cards. So you would have to look for that. There's even a $30,000 card that is not in 2012, but a little bit earlier than that people don't even know is such a big character, but the name is Rayquaza. So that's a little earlier than 2012, but there's a lot of hidden gems that can bring value during those years.
Okay.
Karn, people who reach out to us, one thing I think we see a lot is condition. Just being really, really wary of condition because they get played with and dinged up. And if you seal them right away, great. But another thing that we learned, I think a lot of people learned watching the Logan Paul opening, was seeing him pull cards out, and right away you could tell they weren't going to be 10s and they were pack fresh. And I know a lot of sports cards collectors do realize that, but as you're pulling it, even a clean card is going to be off center or have issues and possibly be an 8 or 9, even if it looks pristine to most of us.
Right out of the pack, right? So when Corey mentions the Logan Paul, he's referring to Logan Paul's. If you don't know, I'm sorry for patronizing. If many of you will know who he is, but he's a very popular, well-followed influencer, and he opened up a box of this first edition, the first edition booster packs, live on his YouTube channel about 3 weeks ago or so. I watched it, and there were up to 400,000 people at any given moment watching this video, and last I checked there were over 8 million views on the video, so a very well watched broadcast, if you will. Sean, you thought you got dissed there. I'm sorry, man. I didn't read the question. I got a lot going on when I'm doing the show, especially with multi guests. So as I didn't understand it, I had to move on. But you hung in there, and I'm glad you did. Boston Herb says Pokemon cards are more delicate than sports and more susceptible to damage or whitening on the back. And I've noticed that, especially around that blue border on the back. I've noticed that they're prone to chipping. And of course, a lot of people played with them. So the older cards are going to be tougher. I've also noticed that the Japanese version of the cards, the back is a lot nicer. I think the back of the Japanese cards, it looks the same, but it's got more of a gold border versus a blue border. I think it just looks a lot better. But back to the eras. So we've got the vintage era. I think and Corey and I were trying to figure this out last night. Karn, how do you look at these eras? Like, in sports cards, I consider vintage to go from the beginning of time till 1989, and then everything after that is modern. But we hear a lot of people talking about really splitting up this modern era or the era since vintage into pre-modern, ultra-modern, modern. Like, there's a bunch of different moderns now, and I'm still trying to get my head around how to frame this and what makes the most sense. And, just for myself, because I think I don't know that we'll ever get consensus on it. But in terms of Pokemon, what is vintage to you? Is it just Japanese up until 1999, or is it Japanese all the way like 96 through 99 up until when Wizards of the Coast stopped producing these and they went over to the Nintendo company? Please fill us in on what's vintage, what's modern, and maybe a ballpark of like what percentage of the sets are in each of those eras.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty much early Japanese cards is kind of what's considered a segment. That's where you get your 96 no rarity cards, which is now being considered the true first edition card. So that's one era, early Japanese cards. Then you get 1999 to 2003, which is the WotC era. And I think that's Wizard of the Coast era. And I think that's like the primary investable era, or the nostalgia and all that, the aspects of the market are. And then you have, then after that, it was kind of like a time where things were kind of dying off with Pokemon. So a lot of the sets are kind of, not a lot of people collected them, but then Pokemon Go started, and what Pokemon does is they create cards based on the generations of Pokemon, right? So right now we're going into the 9th generation of Pokemon. So each generation of Pokemon has like their own game, and then based on that, on the game, they release a bunch of sets out of those of the cards in Pokemon. So Pokemon Go kind of brought the interest back in. And then the biggest modern set, I would say, is Hidden Fates, which came out in 2019 or 2018. So I would say it's pretty much pre-Japanese WotC era. Then it goes into early Nintendo era, and then the boom, and then we get into Hidden Fates, and then Champion's Path, Darkness Ablaze. So yeah, a bit of a lull in the middle there for a wide angle of looking at things. Obviously, the collectors know all the sets, but I'd say that's kind of the timeline.
Okay, Corey, did that sort of resonate with you? What Karn was saying? Is there anything you want to add to that as far as your perception of the way the eras have flowed?
Yeah, it's accurate entirely, but I think just in terms of like when the sports card collector looks at it, what do they think? What do they think of these eras? And I think, I consider, of course, the Japanese to be vintage, to kind of compare it to what does our definition as sports card collectors look like. And I also think of the early WotC sets as a sort of vintage as well. But I almost equate it to sort of that 80s, 90s period of sports cards that we're aware of. What I like to call the nostalgia era of sports cards. If you're a new collector and you're 18, 19 years old, you think of even Kobe's as vintage, right? But to us, to many of us who have been collecting since we were little kids 40 plus years ago, vintage is really like pre-1980 for a lot of us, and that's kind of squishy. But I think of kind of the WotC era as in that nostalgia zone that people are really nostalgic about right now. And I kind of think of pre-1999 Japanese as the vintage zone, because it's really similar to vintage in a way, in that, kids never collected those. They never saw those cards when they were collecting. If you were a collector in 1999 through, say, 2005, But some serious ones heard about them or maybe got a few at shops here and there and stuff, but they didn't resonate with them that much. Just like we didn't watch Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle, but we can appreciate those cards, and they might become of a character collection or someone that appreciates history and art.
Okay, no, it makes sense to me. I mean, and again, this is I kind of look at this episode of the show here as a way for, we got the experts here with me, but I'm somebody who is interested and is, I've dipped my toes into Pokemon, and I think it would be interesting for Pokemon collectors to see how are these sports card guys approaching our hobby. How are they coming into this? And I'm a case in point on that into how we do it, or how I'm doing it at least. And so in order for someone like me from sports to come in, I look for these parallels. I try and make sense of this foreign world, this foreign wealth of information, the depth of products. And the only way I can make sense of it is by drawing parallels between something that I understand and know very well, being sports cards. And that's why I want to get into the understanding the eras. So thanks for that, guys. I want to go to a few comments here. Filmington says Hidden Fates was a recent successful modern release of 2020, which I've heard of Hidden Fates. I see some nice Charizard cards. They start getting more full bleed art in terms of how they are portrayed on the cardboard itself. Really, really cool stuff.
And Hidden Fates came out in 2019, but has been re-released in 2020. So it's kind of covered a couple of years now.
Joe says Pokemon feels like Luca for me. I missed the boat. And that's a really interesting comment, because that raises the question, like, what does the future hold? And the fact of the matter is none of us know for sure, but we all have our theories on that. So we'll get into some of that very soon. Boston Earth, did you all see the fake? So Boston, we did talk about this earlier in the episode. Karn told the story about the fake $375,000 first edition box. And thoughts on collectibles guru. We're not going to talk about anybody in particular here, but I will tell you that Karn, who's sitting right there, he actually sold a second box to the ultimate buyer of that first fake box, and kind of swooped in and saved the day, if you will. Filmington says the Crypto King. So yeah, my understanding is collectibles guru is a crypto guy, and has started to join the Pokemon party. But we'll leave it at that as far as he goes. Ziggy says, yeah, they spoke about that in the beginning. Crazy. Oh, thank you, Ziggy. Curious, what pushed the Rayquaza through the roof? That's an interesting question. Rayquaza being one of these newer characters. I can't even tell you what he looks like. But Karn, what do you think it was that pushed the Rayquaza card or character through the roof?
Just rarity. The first Rayquaza came out in 2005 in a set called X Deoxys. And like I said, Pokemon has a lot of depth. That's when people say it's just a fad or I missed the boat like Luca. There is a lot of sets with a lot of good cards that have huge followings that are still out there that are very cheap. And with Rayquaza, I think the reason why that character's cards are so expensive right now is because they're low pop in a PSA 10. The box is extremely hard to find. Very much similar to a Lugia or a Charizard in terms of how it looks, and it's like this fierce, powerful monster. So it has a big following. It was the icon of that generation. So it's just the same thing. It's just like when you ask your kids today, what is your favorite Pokemon out of the new sets? That's probably going to be the future card that's going to have value, and I think that's what Rayquaza is from 2005.
So it goes back to what you said. Sorry, Karn, goes back to what you said. The cool comes. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so time to go get a Rayquaza then is what it sounds like, if the boat hasn't been missed, but it may
it's have already been like $30,000.
Okay, so missed the boat. We missed
at least.
Yeah, so we definitely missed the boat on that one too, Joe. Not just Pokemon altogether. Corey, what were you going to jump in with?
Oh, I was just going to say, it goes back to what Karn said earlier, that the cool factor comes first. Rayquaza just looks like a cool beast, just like Lugia, just like Charizard, and that alone attracts it. But then all the other factors that Karn mentioned, the scarcity, doubles it up.
All right, good. Ziggy says soccer or Pokemon. Which names are harder to pronounce? And Gareth says hockey. That's good answer. Good answer. Okay, Boston Herb, barring any future large reprints, Hidden Fates may be the next big boom 20 years down the line for kids today. And I think that's an astute comment because
I like it.
that's, and I'm not saying it's an astute comment that Hidden Fates will be the next big thing. I think the astute comment there is that whatever kids are into now, 20 years down the road from whatever they're into now is what will be, 20 years from now, whatever they're into today will become valuable as they have more money and become nostalgic. And as we've talked about many times on this show, nostalgia is at the core of all of these things that we talk about on Sports Cards Live and Pokemon Cards Live, as it is on Halloween tonight. Boston goes on, sports card guys find out what wax is being sought out and they hoard and purchase and resell, don't really need to learn the names. That's what's happening now. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are, right? It's an opportunistic world that we live in. Chris West, welcome, says Pokemon popularity is in waves. It was huge in Gen 1 and Gen 2, then fell off the wayside for a while, and Go, being Pokemon Go, the iPhone app game, brought it back gangbusters. And I mean, I can identify with that a little bit because I did download that app back in the day, however many years ago that was. Walked around, between meetings, I'd be looking for Pokemons, trying to understand what all the hype was, seeing videos of groups of people walking together, bumping into each other, walking into lakes, looking for these things. I never did quite get the attraction to the game, but maybe it's because I wasn't as, understanding of who these characters were. Had I been, maybe I would have liked it a bit more. Boston Irv says Rayquaza, amazing rare in the upcoming Vivid Voltage set. Looks super nice. Easy low entry for those that want one. Sit on it for 10 years. Okay, good advice, I would think. All right, guys. Let's move into the next topic, which was, and this is a term that Corey and I came up with last night as we were meeting to plan this out. Basically, it's the intergenre analogy theory. And this comes back to what I said earlier about, as someone who's new to Pokemon, but a lifer in sports cards, to understand it, I look for these parallels. I look for comparisons that I can make sense of. So, we talked about vintage Pokemon versus vintage sports, and we talked about Luca versus a character called Greninja, G-R-E Ninja. It's funny, I thought you told me it was Gray Ninja, Corey, so I went looking. I couldn't find any hits on this. I'm like, how popular can this guy be? I can't find a single entry. I didn't realize it was Greninja, all one word, G-R-E Ninja. So, Corey, why don't you speak to this, how we talked last night about this intergenre analogy theory, and start off with vintage Pokemon versus vintage sports. How do you see sports collectors being able to draw these parallels, and where do they turn to, I suppose?
Sure. Well, I think once you bring up the graphic of the 1999 and discuss, say, the first edition versus Shadowless versus Unlimited, there's some parallels to be had there as well. But if we just initially look at that 1999 iconic set, the first edition base, the Charizard has been very, very comparable to the Michael Jordan 1986 Flair rookie for years. For at least the last couple of years I've been tracking it, their charts are very, very similar. Of course, they differ at times, but even along 10s, 9s, and 8s, it's amazing how closely they followed until just the last couple of months when Charizard has, of course, absolutely taken off. But that Charizard is, I feel like it's the Michael Jordan or the Super 86 Flair Michael Jordan collectible. It's in that nostalgia zone, where people remember it, and it's the most iconic card of the most iconic set in the hobby. And so you have that card, I think, that you sort of use as your like middle C on your piano keyboard, right? That's like everything kind of flows off of that in the way that I think about cards. And so I think a lot of those first edition sets, I think of them kind of like the iconic 1980s sets, 1986 Fleers or what have you. And then as you say, move back to Japanese, that's more like I think of it like a different era. Some people are wondering like, hey, is the 1996 Japanese Charizard like an XRC? I don't really think of it that way. I think of it instead like a vintage version of that. So, the Japanese one might be the Babe Ruth of Charizards, right? The 1995, if we really contend that's the first ever release, the Top Sun, that I kind of think of it like the Honus Wagner or the George Mikan of the Charizard. and then you have others like 97 Tomy, which is incredibly rare. I kind of think of that as like the Topps test set for any sports collectors that know Topps test. That's a set that is really, really hard to come by, and there's only like 12 graded Wilt Chamberlains in or something. So there's these weird sets, and I start to equate them to these early vintage sets myself. And after you go, say, Jungle, Fossil, Rocket, I start to think of those as like second, third, fourth year Michael Jordans, right? The Charizard, except Charizard doesn't exist in those sets. But as you go further into additional Charizards, I kind of think of them as like additional future ones. And then, as we look to these new stars, Lugia and I wonder if Lugia is the LeBron James. This comparison gets a little crazier as you get towards the more modern ones because there's so many sets and releases that how do you equate it? But when it comes to 99 and earlier, I kind of think of it as like, hey, you've got your nostalgic era 80s stars, and then before that you have you've got these vintage kind of eras of Pokemon.
Did that make sense to you, Karn?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think even like the modern cards like Greninja, I can see that being like an early maybe Luka Doncic or something like that. I think it's far away from being valuable, I think, but I think it's a good idea because it's been voted the most popular Pokemon in the last 3 years. So that could be your prospect, maybe like a Woven Chrome prospecting type of situation. So yeah.
See, this is cool. This is cool. It's cool to kind of try and understand, put it in context that we sports card guys understand. And this is what this does that. Corey, you said earlier, I think you said Jungle, Fossil, and what was it? Did you say Rocket as the third one there in that comment?
Rocket. Yeah, Jungle, Fossil, Rocket. And they release additional characters. So Charizard doesn't actually persist in some of those sets. There's actually a Jungle Pikachu, which has really risen quite a bit. But you do get characters that repeat. It just happens Charizard doesn't in those sets.
Right. So those sorry, go ahead, Karn.
You have to collect Jungle and Fossil. They're an expansion to the base set. So to get the first original 151 Pokemon, you have to get Jungle, Fossil, and base set. So then you go to Team Rocket, which is you start getting second appearances from a lot of the characters like Charizard and such.
Okay, so the way it works is you have the 1999 base set, and we're going to take a closer look at it with a graphic on screen in a minute. And then the expansions were Fossil and Jungle, and these are and I've looked at these. They're also, I believe, 1999 is when they came out, and you get some additional new characters there that were just, again, expanded the game. And so to me, they're very early, and when we're going to talk about this later, like what is there besides Charizard and Pikachu, and are there other important characters? And I do think that there are. And what I've done as a novice, an early entry, is I've looked at a lot of cards now, a lot of Pokemon cards on eBay. And I've tried to identify kind of like what are some of these characters that I would want to add that I think could go up in value. And I've identified a couple, and I bought like a couple more cards based on this very, very amateur opinion, if you will, very amateur approach, being that I don't know what I'm looking at, but I know what I like. I know what pops out at me, what looks cool, what's art that appeals to me. And that's what I've kind of gone after. So there are other characters there, and some of these I think are primed to go up in value as people look to expand, especially with all the money that's flowing out there right now, for sure. We had a few people jump in with some comments here. Boston Irv says Charizard is the Michael Jordan Fleer rookie. He says Luka is the shiny Hidden Fates Charizard, which I thought, again, and we're all entitled to draw these parallels as works for us. Seabass says thoughts on Legendary Collection. I understand that's another set that came out. I don't know much about it. Whichever one of you wants to mention some. Okay, Karn, why don't you tell us a little bit about what was Legend? Was it just a brand that came out? And
it equated to the Pokemon Go release in 2016. So Legendary Collection was kind of a reprint of the 1999 base set. So you got the same 1999 cards, but you got like reverse foil or non-holo of some cards, or you had like some like different parallels with like an explosion as the foil. So they're cool looking cards, and right now they're really popping off in value because as people get priced out of first edition or shadowless or even unlimited that's going crazy, you go to the next one that kind of reminds you of your nostalgic times in childhood. So I think that's what Legendary Collection does. And I think it's a great set for that nostalgia feeling, and that's where the value is coming from. It's getting pretty high in value, in my opinion, but still, like the PSA 10 Charizard is a pop 151 when the PSA 9 has 3,500 in it. So there's still like places and gaps in there that you can hold on to, and there's value in it. But on like an overall basis, I would say Legendary Collection is probably getting pretty up there with price.
So it's almost like sounds to me from the way you described it, it's almost like a tribute, if you will. We see in sports cards, we see tribute cards to old sets come out. We see exquisite tributes and the cup tributes, that kind of thing. That's the parallel that I draw there. Bromf says, would that mean that XY Evolutions Charizard be the decade of... Would that mean the XY Evolutions Charizard would be the decade of excellent Fleer 86 reprint of MJ? I don't have the answer to that. Sounds pretty
very similar. Yeah, it's pretty much the same as Legendary. So they've reprinted it a lot, the Charizard. So it's the same type of situation. XY Evolution Charizard looks like the 1999 Charizard, but it just has like a slight variations to it.
Okay.
Agree entirely.
This this anonymous Facebook user says, what's a safer investment right now, Doncic or Mbappe? I'm going to say Doncic. Let's keep going. It's off topic, but thank you for the question. Chris West says, as someone that grew up playing the card game and collecting them, it's so bizarre hearing people talk about the cards like this. I'm sure it is, but that's the world we are in right now, right? Okay, Dwayne says, do you grade everything from first edition?
I would, honestly. Like, the reason why I would personally is it depends. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. It depends on if you are collecting for the nostalgia reasons, where you want to create a binder set or something like that. You're doing it to look at the cards and collect them as a set. Then put them in your binder set. You don't really need to grade it. But if you want to sell them, it's so hard. The value changes dramatically based on condition. I get a lot of PMs, messages on Facebook or Instagram, and people have a bunch of cards and they ask what the value is. And truly, the value can range from 1,000 to 250,000 just based on the condition of the card, right? So the only way to properly assess the value of a certain card in a first edition set is to grade it and get that numerical value assigned to it.
And I would agree with that. To me, again, from the amateur's perspective, just thinking about sports cards, it's like if you have a Gordie Howe rookie, or if you have a 52 Topps Mickey Mantle, it doesn't matter what condition it's in. You want to get it slabbed. So, I'm glad to hear you say that, Karn, because I would expect that the key card in all of Pokemon being that first edition Shadow, or that first edition Charizard, that you would want to slab it in any condition. And I almost forgot to bring the graphic up so we can show people what these different versions of this 1999 Charizard looks like and how to tell them apart. So let's actually, I'm going to bring that up right now. I'm going to just share my screen here with everybody. Give me a second. And here it should pop up in a moment. There it is. Okay, so this graphic shows the differences within the Charizard. So this is the first edition, this is the Shadowless, and this is the Unlimited. And I'll even do this, guys, because I know this, but I'll let you speak up in a moment. So I want to thank Karn first for sending this over to me. But the first thing, you'll notice that we got a couple circles here. We got this circle up over here, and we got this one over here. So right over here, this little black stampy thing, that's the first edition stamp. You'll notice that you don't see it here, and you don't see it here. So it's actually the very first print of the first Charizard that came out in North America in 1999. You'll also notice that there's a clean break between the frame of the art itself and the border of the card versus all the way over here where you see the shadow. So when you hear about Shadowless, you're talking about there's no shadow here, there's also no shadow here. But on this card in the middle, while there's no shadow, there's also no first edition stamp. So this one is called the first edition, and it's all first editions are shadowless in the 1999 base set. In the shadowless card, it's the exact same as the first edition, except it doesn't have the first edition stamp, And then the unlimited, no first edition stamp, but has the shadow. And these are the ones that if you watched recently, you've heard me say, I picked up a few of these ones because I was priced out of both of these. I thought, where are people going to go next? Probably to here. Now, all that said, I do understand there are some other intricacies that can happen within these cards. So, Karn, why don't you tell us about some of these other intricacies and expand on anything that I left out?
Yeah, I don't know how deep you want to go because there's a couple of things that go pretty far. So the reason why the first edition set is why it's so go-to is because it's considered to be the one that first came out on the West Coast. So it was super rare. It wasn't released worldwide in America. It wasn't in every state or anything. And the first ones available were considered thick stamp cards. So thick stamp is essentially that first edition stamp. The one is thicker. So that is a first edition thick stamp card. And then I guess the people at WotC decided we don't like how the thick stamp looks, so we're going to make it thin stamp. So then they made the one smaller, and that's considered the thin stamp. So the thick stamp is considered to be first, the thin stamp comes after. And then there's a situation where maybe during the printing process, the stamps didn't stamp properly, and you have stamps that are halfway, and those are called ghost stamps. Ghost stamps are incredibly rare to find, and it was a situation where it's in the middle of the production process, and it's a rarity in the Pokemon world, and you don't see them very often. If you have a ghost stamp first edition Charizard, and even if it's PSA 10, you're holding on to something incredible. And then midway through that production process, they decided, all right, we're going to remove the stamp altogether, and that's where the shadowless comes in. And the shadowless was a very, very small print run. The pop report is a lot less than the first edition stamp versions. I think the PSA 10 shadowless is 55 in a PSA 10. There's 55 PSA 10 copies, while there's 180 first edition PSA 10 copies. So anyways, then they decided, oh, this is a hit. Pokemon's huge. We got to do a third print run. And then they decided to add a shadow. So then the shadowed version is the unlimited version where there's a lot out there. It's mass printed. And then there's also other variations in the holo. Now there's some Charizards that have a matte holographic foil on the back. There's some that shine brighter. There's cards that are red. There's some that are yellow. It gets very complex in that sense. And there's rarity factors to each and where they were in the production process. So there's a lot of intricacies involved. I don't know if there's any parallel to sports cards with a major card like that. What I think about is like the Gretzky print line on the back as the first edition and something like that. And there's lighter OPGs as well, lighter blue ones and darker blue ones. So
I was just about to say that the difference in stamps, the thick stamp, the thinner stamp, the ghost stamp, I think I've heard it called or referred to as the gray stamp. Is that the same thing? Yeah. To me, that's very, a very minute detail similar to the print lines you'll see on the back of the O-Pee-Chee Gretzky rookie that people consider to be the first print run. And we've talked about that extensively on this show before. But so that's pretty cool. I like being able to understand. And, you hear shadowless, you think, well, there must be a shadow. I didn't know what any of this stuff meant until someone actually pointed out to me and showed me on the cards what these things were. You've mentioned the word holo. You've mentioned the word reverse holo. I think what that is referring to is within the card, within the square right here, within the square right here, this is like a holographic background behind the character, the subject itself. And this part down here is just your normal cardboard matte finish. And not every card out of those packs had the holograph. I believe that if you were to open one of those original boxes, you're only going to get 12 or 13 holo cards in the whole box. And one of them would have been the Charizard. Well, maybe. And in the first edition set, I think it's 100 or 105 cards, somewhere in there. There's the first 16 cards, number 1 through 16, came with this holo effect. And to me, those are the first 16 cards would be the most interesting because they have those extra bells and whistles, that extra holographic effect. So is there anything down, in the detail below here where I see, so first print run, second print run, third print run, we talk about the stamp, the PSA, pop reports, and the values. So, okay, I'm gonna take this off the screen. I think that was really
Jeremy,
helpful. Sorry,
Can
go
we
ahead.
keep that up for just a minute? I wanted to talk about the sports card investment parallel to these different offerings in a way,
Sure.
kind of how you think of it from a value or an investment standpoint, and I think how the market, in a way that translates to what sports card investors would understand. So you've got your first edition cards, and I really sort of equate those with your very, very, imagine if the 1986 Jordan had the types of card offerings that we have today, such as National Treasures or Prism Golds numbered out of 10. That's the type of category of card that the first edition base would be as far as a card investment. Now imagine that the Jordan had the equivalent of, say, Prism Silvers or maybe Prism Colored Parallels. In my mind, that's what I kind of think about Shadowless, although you can see that the pops are really low. So some people do place, some people really enjoy Shadowless. To me, that first edition base stamp is like pinstripes on the Yankees uniforms. There's just really something special about it that many, many people are drawn to, but Shadowless has a great collector base too. But then if you go to the third one, the Unlimited one, that's your Prism base or, optic base Zion that has 15,000 copies. Of course, it'd be the Jordan version of it, so it's still very, very valuable and coveted, but it's the base version that has just thousands and thousands. That word unlimited I think is kind of funny because it sounds, in a way, if you don't know, it kind of sounds awesome, like, oh, This is unlimited, but it doesn't mean unlimited value or upside. It means unlimited quantity, sort of.
Okay, no, good add on there, Corey. Thank you so much. Okay, so there we go. I think we've given a pretty good lesson in terms of the genres and the first edition. And, I want to mention too, when you get into those expansion sets, the Jungle, the Fossil, they're also the first edition versus the Unlimited concept. From what I'm seeing, it exists there as well, but they're all shadows. There's no Shadowless. They added it on and they really liked it because they kept it. So there are first editions with shadows, but not in the first base set, only in the expansions, just to make that clear. Okay, we have a couple of comments that have come in, so we're going to get to those, and then we're going to move on to the next topic. Joe says, I'm curious about Pokemon collectors' resources. Is this a demographic that happens to have significant wealth? It's interesting to compare it with the money involved in sports card collecting. So, Karn, to you, you've been in this a long time. Where is all this money coming from that's propping up these values so high?
You know what? Prior to what just happened in the spike, I would say that there was a few people on the top end where they're making a lot of money and they're putting a lot of cards, a lot of money into their cards, into the trophy cards, the high end of the Pokemon market. But what the market did have across the whole demographic is a lot of first edition cards from base set, a lot of unlimited cards, a lot of shadowless cards that they held for the last 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, 5 years. In the last 2 months, this whole demographic has created themselves a significant amount of wealth. There's 20-year-olds that had $2,000 invested that were, I read stories of kids with the allowance money that were buying shadowless Charizards or first edition Charizards 3-4 years ago. They still have them, and they sold them for $60,000 today or $50,000 today. So I think this market's going to mature, and I think there's a lot of people with significant wealth in the market now. What was only a select few, probably like 20 to 50 people that were at the top end. Now we're going to see a lot more people with a lot more money that are hardcore Pokemon collectors. So in my mind, what's going to happen is they're going to continue to collect, and they're going to do what collectors do, and that is complete more sets and buy more of the top end cards in the market. So that's why I don't think it's a fad.
And we saw that with Logan Paul's very well publicized break of that box, where he opened up this box of 36 packs, but he sold those packs to the public. So he had like 30 other people directly involved. They each paid $11,111 for one pack, and a handful of them came out way ahead. One person hit the Charizard, which they thought would have been a 9 or so, and still worth 5 times what he paid, if not more. So there was that. And then we had Logic, the rapper, bought the PSA 10 Charizard for $220,000 from Iconic Auctions a couple of weeks ago, or like the day after Logan Paul's break. And that I've even heard the term the Logic effect or the Logic high. I think, Corey, you're nodding. What am I talking about there? Because it was in passing, so I'm not exactly sure, but I've heard that comment. What do they mean when they talk about that?
Logic resonates with so many people, and the stature that he's at, having that accumulate on top of Logan Paul, Steve Aoki investing. You just see that continue to happen. In terms of money in the hobby, there's chatter about different funds coming in, and of course they're going to be looking for those premium assets. And we know that Rally Road has purchased a PSA 10 first edition complete set, and that is open to trading again. So will we continue to see those ventures jumping into it? The momentum just builds on itself. And then of course, you're all sports cards many of you are sports card investors here on this live, and you maybe haven't looked at Pokemon before, and now you're looking at it. So that's what momentum creates. The momentum, not just into the culture for, again, making it cool, but also momentum in terms of people seeing opportunity and following on. People looking at, what can I get for my kid to tuck away for 18 years? I'm hearing a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so we'll just see where it goes.
Okay, awesome. And with the potential for 20 years down the road comes the question of like, what could the downside be? And I'm setting this up because Boston Irv makes a great point. He says, with the ever-growing popularity, I hope Pokemon learned its lesson seen in Crimson Invasion and Steam Siege. Again, 2 sets I've never heard of before, and doesn't overprint these new released modern sets. This is the only downside and the scare, the concern. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Are they going, to me, it's like, hey, these guys, they're producing a game. It's like Monopoly. Nobody cares how many copies of Monopoly exist. Nobody's trading the little card. It's just not the same thing. But that's what this started out as a game. And now it's like, I hope they learned their lesson. Well, the lesson they learned is this stuff sells. The more we print, the more we sell. So do they need to care about the future values of these cards the same way that I believe today's sports card companies do need to care, because it's going to help their longevity? Does it matter as much to the Pokemon company? And how risky is it that they're just going to overprint these things, today's sets, to the point where they won't be worth anything in 20 years? But that's either of you, whoever wants to jump in first.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think the Pokemon company is definitely in a balancing act, but you got, like you said, it's a game. It's something that they want all the kids to have their hands on, and I think sports card guys are a little bit more entwined with the investing portion of things. And honestly, the Pokemon community rather not investors come into the market. They rather see their cards be available for themselves. And so I think the Pokemon community, Pokemon company understands that, and they don't want the product to just be off the shelves like it's Prism at Walmart retail level, where you can't. You got to like go every Thursday and at 9 a.m. to get a box. So they kind of want to cater to the community and print as much as possible to get as many kids involved in the game. I think that's what's cool about the first edition set and the base set, is because it was organic. It's not made for investors. It's not made to make money. The money aspect is there because of the collectors. It all goes back to the collector. That's why investors have to respect the collector and can't just go into the market and start investing and kind of like creating this divide amongst the community. I think there has to be a little bit more positivity involved with both sides. And I think one of those aspects is let the Pokemon company print as much as possible, and let the people that want to play the game get the cards that they want so they can play the game.
That makes great sense. Yeah, go ahead, Corey.
I was going to say that it's, in a lot of ways, in the sports card community, we talk about how do we keep the kids engaged in sports cards, and in Pokemon they do. They keep printing, especially some of the lower tier sets. They'll print. It's always there at Target or Walmart, in the aisles. There's certain sets, and I see kids in the aisles just like looking through it, and they don't care that it won't be collectible in 20 years necessarily. They just think like, hey, this one has a variation on Greninja or whatever, that maybe was printed a million times, but they get to play that game. And we are keeping the kids in it. And if they happen to be interested in investment, putting things away, there's all kinds of avenues for them to chase that. And yeah, absolutely, Karn. Being really respectful with the collectors, they benefit this hobby so much because there's so many passionate people who will never release the first edition base Charizard they have, or a special set that they've put together. And we owe them a debt of gratitude because that scarcity happens because they love it so much. And working with them and giving them opportunities to continue to collect is great. But we have, as if you're an investor, you have your avenues to look at great investments, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the set that was released. We don't have to go buy out an entire shelf at Target.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff, guys. I want to say good evening back to Trevor LeConte. Welcome to the show. Ziggy says 41 viewers. Tip your host. That's me, guys. That's me, the host. Tip your host with a thumbs up. I'd greatly appreciate that. I'll also take this moment to welcome you to the show if you're new. Welcome to Sports Cards Live. We have a lot of fun on here Wednesday and Saturday nights. And please, if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, I do greatly appreciate that. Jose Hernandez, welcome, says Pokemon has reprinted sets after release, such as Unbroken Bonds. Also, Pokemon has showed that their interest lies within the players, not the collectors. So we just came off talking about respecting the collectors, and Jose is saying that their interest lies within the players, not the collectors. I think the Pokemon company, their interest lies within the players, and I think that makes sense. That's their bread and butter. That's who's paying the bills. Release after release. He goes on to say they can't afford to have singles for new product be too expensive, or else the game will die. Interested in some of your thoughts on these comments, guys. Again, whoever feels they want to take this one first, please jump in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I kind of put the collector and the game player in the same section when I was talking prior. But yeah, you can make it even a greater subsection. There's Pokemon people that just collect the cards, and there's also the game that's getting played as well. And yeah, that's exactly it. That's kind of what happens with Magic too, right? When the value of cards go up too much, you want to print more so people can buy the singles that they need to. And I think Pokemon is doing a great job at that, because that's what's going to continue the brand and grow the actual game playing. I don't think the game was actually played as much earlier on, so they're really trying to grow that aspect of the whole the market there. But I also think that they've juggled it really well with having those hyper secret rares that aren't even a part of the checklist, that are kind of these special cards that people can chase and still have that feeling of hitting that big one. And I think in terms of the investor angle of it all, it's going to come down to pop report and grading, less so on how rare a card is. I think there's going to be thousands of each, but the grading aspect is what's going to create like the value there.
Right, just like in sports cards. So that makes a lot of sense to a guy like me and to a lot of the audience of this show. So good stuff. Rich says, amen, Karn. No, I'm not a fan of some people cleaning up their local Walmarts or Targets and trying to move the boxes for a premium on Facebook. And I've seen both arguments to this phenomenon going on right now. I've heard the argument, well, it's not fair. You're not leaving them for the kids. You're taking it all for yourself. But I've heard the other argument that, hey, it's a hustle. It's a hustle. We're living in a capitalistic and opportunistic society. So it's kind of like if you snooze, you lose, sort of thing, survival of the fittest. And I'm not sure which side that I fit in. It would be nice to think there's enough to go around for everybody, but it's also, I think it's challenging to expect people to not capitalize when they have the opportunity, because again, that's the society that we happen to live in. Boston Irv, I appreciate this one. Great answers and show. Thank you so much. Chris West says Pokemon is like Magic. They print cards for the game players, not the collectors, which makes sense. Jose, I do also consider the players, collectors in the same mix. And it's like, yeah. And so maybe the other category, like the investors, the people.
So I was kind of thinking with it like,
basically, right? It's like the players collect at the same time. And then there's people like me who have never played the game, don't know what all the different details on these cards mean. Like there's all sorts of symbols all over them and numbers, and I don't know what any of that stuff means, but I still have put a couple $1,000 into the stuff. It's like, what? Anyway, so I'm certainly not the collector player, but maybe I'll turn into a collector, but not a set collector, which is the way I understand a lot of people collect Pokemon. Is they want to build the complete sets. I like Chris's next comment here. He says Charizard is the Black Lotus of Pokemon. So Black Lotus being the most important card from Magic the Gathering. And, like we're looking for parallels between Pokemon and sports, it's also fun to draw parallels between Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. And interestingly, both of those games and products were created by Wizards of the Coast. Isn't that correct?
Yep.
So they've had a couple of home runs on their hands, and we could get into it also, but they've done a few other products. I know Corey's been picking up some of those other ones. Very quickly, Corey, what are some of the other products that Wizards of the Coast have made that you think are cool?
Yeah, they make a lot of cool products. I think what's really cool about exploring some of the other avenues is if you just want to hold a base booster box and have a 36-pack box for cheap, you have options out there. They actually made a Simpsons box. I don't have any of those, but they're kind of fun. The cards are lower card stock and whatnot, but still, it's the Simpsons. It's fun, and the art on the outside of the box is pretty cool. I've actually been collecting some of the 2001 WotC Wizards of the Coast Harry Potter TCG sets. They have gorgeous art, and Harry Potter is, I believe, really iconic.
What is a TCG? Trading card game, right?
Yep.
Okay. Important to know, because this is something that I wouldn't have understood before. But when we talk, it's obvious once you say it. But you'll see it a lot out there just when you're researching Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. TCG, trading card game. Okay, I just wanted to jump in and clarify that.
Yeah. CCG is another term, means collectible card game. And even say within Harry Potter, there's one box that's just a CCG. It's just cards from the movies, basically. And Star Wars has a CCG and a TCG, I believe. They certainly have a TCG from the 90s. That's another product. Those are pretty cool too, but they just have these little niche collector bases, and they were never, some of these are dead, and they continue to be played by pockets of people. They didn't resonate like Pokemon and Magic.
Okay, cool stuff. A couple more comments, and I want to get into the next topic. And we're getting already to we're an hour 37 already, guys. So let's keep on going. Jose says, I just think when supply chain issues for Pokemon correct itself, it'll be hard to flip some of the product. And I think some of these supply chain issues are probably driven by the pandemic we're in, and just people aren't working as much as they were before. So could be. Chris says, as someone that played the game, it boggles my mind that Charizard is so valuable. It's not the best card from the set. So what is it then, guys? Is it because he's the coolest looking character? And, although that's subjective, the majority of people in the hobby have concluded that Charizard is the coolest looking character. Is that why it's the most important card?
Iconic, that's what it comes down to, right? And in terms of the game playability, from what I understand, it was hard to get Charizard to attack because it requires a lot of extra steps to get there. But in terms of just value, it's demand and supply, right? It just everyone wanted the Charizard in terms of it because it's just cool looking dragon. It's red. It's got fire. It's holographic. It's the one that the Pokemon Company used to market the material along with Pikachu. And people always ask, why is Pikachu not as valuable? It's because there's 1,000, like millions of those Pikachus. It was considered a common card, right? And just Charizard just became that icon, like Jordan in basketball. So
well, and you know what? Here, Chris makes a comment that makes good sense to me. He said Charizard is iconic because he is the final form from one of the 3 original starters. So again, my very limited understanding is when you start a game of Pokemon with your friends, you have a starter card, and it can be one of 3 different characters or however many. And that these characters, as you build them up in the game, they evolve to the next stronger level of, they grow up, if you will. So Charizard is the fully evolved, I guess, Charmander. Is that right? Charmander's a lesser valuable card, but a starter card, so has popularity there. But as you build him up and strengthen him, he goes from Charmander to Charmeleon.
So where it actually starts it from the Game Boy games. So Professor Oak, which is Ash Ketchum's, he's the professor, the scientist in the video game. He brings out 3 Pokeballs at the start of the game, and you have to pick one of the Pokeballs, and it's Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle, right? So that's your first Pokemon in the game, and that's what everyone remembers when they're playing when they're a kid. And essentially, when you go through the game, you start fighting other Pokemon. Your Pokemon levels up, and it evolves at certain forms. At level 16, that Bulbasaur turns into an Ivysaur, and then the Ivysaur turns into a Venusaur, and that's where Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard come from. So I think that's where the nostalgia.
So Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard being the 3 most valuable cards because they're the fully evolved of the 3 starter cards.
Yeah, that's where the demand comes from. It's because that's what everyone remembers from the actual Game Boy video games. So
Okay.
The 3 final forms of those 3 starter Pokemon you got.
And if so, when you started the game, whether it's the card game or the Game Boy game, but you start a game of Pokemon, you have to pick one of these starter characters.
Mhm.
Were there kids or people who some people chose one over the other?
Yeah.
And does that drive their collecting now? Like in sports, we have player collectors, we have team collectors, we have set collectors. You know, I was trying to draw those parallels as to how do collectors approach Pokemon? Are there character collectors? Are there set collectors? What's the equivalent of a team collector? Is it the whole evolution of a character? Karn, how do you see that kind of reconciling with sports cards?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. You have character collectors. I was trying to think of a team portion to it all. I don't think I can figure that one out. Maybe actually,
I'll jump in with that after. Yeah.
Eevee evolutions, for example. I guess that's a team. So Eevee is a character, and it has like 15 different evolutions. So evolutions is like what they transform into. So maybe someone is an Eevee evolution collector. So they're collecting the whole team of Eevee evolutions. So that's why I love Pokemon. There's so many angles to it. It's not just a card game. It's also a video game that everyone loved, and not everyone that loved the video game loved the card game, but there's a lot of people that just love the card game, and then there's people that just love the TV show and didn't play the game or didn't play the card game. There's so many different angles to it, and then there's people that are just collectors. Then now there's investors coming in, and it's just there's so many different angles. There's Venusaur collectors that just strictly think that Venusaur is better than Charizard, and then there's people that debate about it, just like Jordan versus LeBron. Like Blastoise would beat Charizard in a battle, or Lugia would beat Charizard, or which one's more powerful. And collectors get into these spats with each other, and that's why it's such a big thing. It's transcending in that sense that people really care for these characters, and they've created a connection to these characters, and that's what makes it great.
It's really interesting, Karn. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, I draw the parallel to sports in that sometimes you'll see someone that decides just to invest in, I don't know, Ray Allen, or even someone, a lesser known player, a very unique character like on the E4 forums, which Karn, is one of the biggest watering holes. It's E4, the letter E and the number 4 forums for a lot of the very serious Pokemon collectors. There's someone on there who's a Weedle collector, just not a powerful character at all, not very commonly collected, but by collecting Weedle, they can get themselves really, really cool cards across some of the more expensive sets, just like you see someone that collects a unique character like Tom Gugliotta or something in the NBA, something weird like that. And then another avenue I've seen, I think the evolutions is a big one, very great point for the teams, but I've seen artist collectors too, people who just love a very specific artist that shows up through the years. So
interesting stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to approach, and then there's someone like me who, again, brand new, comes in and just, it's like it really. When I realized it yesterday, I realized, okay, I'm doing this right because I'm following the golden rule of collecting, which is collect what you like. So when I've researched into Pokemon, these other cards that I've purchased recently are cards that I like the looks of. I thought they were cool. I have no idea if they're popular characters, but I went and I picked up a couple of cards. I'll tell you what they are. I don't need, it's not a secret because I don't plan on buying more of them. But I bought and I don't even remember the set they came out of. Karn, you'll know, Corey, you might too. But I picked up what's known as the Umbreon because it was a really cool looking card with a lot of black and yellow, a color combination I just think looks nice together. And I thought the character looked somewhat mystical, if you will, sort of thing. And I thought that's a cool looking card. I think, and I thought to myself, number one, I like it. And number two, I think it's got potential because of how cool it looks. So I bought one. And I think, I hope I made a good call. We'll know in time, I suppose. But the fact of the matter is I like the card. So it's welcome in my ownership, in my collection. And then I purchased another one called Yanma, Yanma. And it's like an insect, almost a bumblebee, but it was just a real cool picture. The card just looked nice. And I thought that's a card that I think could have potential based on what it looks like, based on how much I like looking at it. And that's what I did. Again, it was collecting what you like. And if you do that, you can't go wrong. Hopefully I continue to like these things, but I'll ask you, Karn, how did I do with those choices?
Yeah, pretty good. Like the Yanma, it just did $15,000 in a PSA 10. It's a really good looking card. It's not very, no one really talks about it as being this like great character, but that's the fun part of Pokemon. It doesn't have to be talked about. The character doesn't even have to be popular amongst the market, and people will still want it. And I think that's pretty special. And people will want it because they want to complete the set. And they want to complete the set because they truly enjoy just catching them all, you know? And I think Pokemon is just amazing in that sense. So yeah, you made a good decision.
Okay, I appreciate that feedback. Good to know. Validate my kind of my approach or what I like. I want to go back to Boston Irv's comment from a few minutes ago. Pokemon has so many layers to it for investors to get on board. There's too many sets, lots of characters, and then the same sets in multiple languages, which we haven't even talked about yet. How this scares some away so I can find Pokemon locally. I guess it scares people away so he's able to find more for himself. But we didn't talk about it earlier that even all these sets come out. Well, I think many of these sets come out in Japanese, English, Italian, French, German. I've seen at least those languages. I'm sure there's more, but that does add to the complexity. And I have a feeling, Corey, that's something that you find very interesting. Is this something that you follow, or you try to get a really good understanding of what all is out there?
It does to some degree. I think, again, we're talking about a set that's made to be played with, that's made to be, either collected as cards or played with by kids and collectors. And so if they're in China, if they're in Spain, they're going to want that in Spanish or Chinese. So the Pokemon Company cares about that first and foremost. There certainly is still value, say, to a 1999 first edition Chinese version, and some of these are actually really rare, like some of the Korean versions and whatnot. But to me, it just makes sense that they do that. As a collector, I think, focus on the sets that they did make limited runs of. Or as an investor, if you want to be an investor, focus on those. And just realize that there might be reprints and there are going to be multiple languages. To me, I focus on either English or the original Japanese. Yeah. And those other languages, I've gotten a few over the years, and I just think they're sort of cool, and I tuck them in a box, but I don't value them anywhere near to the English or the original Japanese.
Yeah, makes good sense to me. I've said to you before, I only want them in English. But the Japanese, because it's the original, that's where I could, and that's why I'm thankful for your sending me a care package and kind of opening my eyes to it. So that's really cool, actually. I get more excited the more I think about it even. I want to welcome my man, Rodman Martinez, to the show. When I think of Pokemon, I think of Pikachu. That was me up until 6 months ago too, Rodman. And I also want to make a shout out here I want to shout out Jordan Hagedorn, who's my guest on episode number 50 of Sports Cards Live. We're on episode 59 right now tonight. But Jordan does a podcast called For the Hobby, and he just dropped episode number 5 like yesterday or the day before. I listened to it. He called it the starting 5. He interviewed 5 of his favorite collectors or good friends in the hobby, and Rodman was one of them. And again, check it out, guys. It's in podcast format only right now, I believe. It's called For the Hobby, hosted by Jordan Hagedorn. who again was on episode number 50 with me, and he interviews 5 collectors, and they're all great, interesting kind of sections within the overall podcast. It's not too long, and it's really well produced. So I recommend you all go watch that. So shout out to Jordan, shout out to Rodman. That was awesome, Rodman. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Hopefully you're still here listening. I like this question we have back over here. Jose says, it'll be interesting to see what the new generations will see as their Charizard, and Boston Irv jumps in with Lugia. And Lugia is, I ask the question during the Sports Cards Live 5 all the time in terms of what is your biggest hobby purchase or sale regret. And for me, I have my biggest non-purchase regret, which was purchasing a Lugia about a month ago in a PSA 9. And since I didn't buy it, it's like tripled in value. Now, of course, it's we're all driven a little bit by the fear of missing out, but this is when the fear turns into reality. And now I feel like I'm priced out, even though there could still be room, but we never know. Chris Wett, and I want to go back and mention that the reason I was even looking at the Lugia was because I was talking to Karn one night. We were texting, we were just talking, and he said to me that Lugia is the Charizard of like the next generation. I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. If he's the next, it's like, who's the next Michael Jordan? Who's the next Wayne Gretzky? When we figure out who that might be as collectors, we go and pick up a couple cards of theirs. I tried to do the same thing, and the last minute I just didn't make that bid, and now I'm kind of wishing that I did. So anyway, Boston Herb, I think Karn definitely agrees with you on that. I do, with my very limited knowledge, just based on what I hear other people say. Chris says that Charizard was the most popular, then Blastoise and Venusaur was the least popular. I think he's talking about of the starter fully evolved, right? So that makes sense. Okay. Let's we're gonna wrap it. We're gonna go a bit into overtime here, but let's just move on to the next topic we had, which was really what we dubbed as the cross-pollination of concepts between genres. And again, this is us trying to find parallels between Pokemon and sports cards, and like what concepts are going to go from one to the other. What concepts will the sports card companies maybe look to Pokemon for to bring into their products, and vice versa? What concepts in sports cards would Pokemon consider bringing in, and maybe not bringing, but what's already there? I think is even what we're talking about when Corey and I kind of came up with this topic last night. Before we jump in, I do want to just quickly answer Boston Irv's question. You guys have Instagram handle? We do. I'm going to put them up right now for you and for everybody else. So this is Corey. He's at Yamwax, YAMWAX. Really easy for you there, Boston Irv. Corey is at Yamwax. Karn is the big 3, the digit 3 hockey, the big 3 hockey. I'll leave that up there for a quick second. And then mine is right there, JLee_sports cards live. So we have Yamwax, the big 3 hockey, and JLee_sports cards live. All right, I'll just go back to the comments now. We're going to get into this cross-pollination concept. So the first thing, I've got a few, Corey, I've got a few subtopics in my notes here, like errors and variations, rookie cards and first appearances, parallels, super premium stuff. Why don't you talk about errors and variations?
Sure. So errors and variations are a big deal, as we've talked about already on this episode, whether it's missing the first edition stamp being printed incorrectly, sometimes cards being completely misprinted where the next card is visible on the side of the card. Those actually are often coveted by Pokemon collectors, where in sports we almost want to toss them away, right? So you've got your errors and misprints with certain types of collectors. Not everybody, but a lot of Pokemon collectors look at those, and I kind of learned that through my son, when even through just his YouTubers he watches, kid YouTubers. They know that some of these error cards are really rare and special. And so when I was hunting for a George Mikan card, I eventually settled on one of the no red ink ones that is an error, and it's a little bit less valuable than the standard Mikan rookie. And he was just blown away by this. Like, how could that be worth less when it's such a rare coveted error? And I'm like, it's just the way it is in sports. But there's other cards like I think that it's possible that if Pokemon collectors move into sports where this sort of seeps into the culture, you could see some of these error cards becoming slightly more valuable in the sports cards world. Jeremy Padower is a great Pokemon collector. He has a full 1999 first edition set, a wonderful Instagram, Jeremy Padower. Follow that guy for sure. But he's really pushing a lot of different topics, including Pikachu being important. But one of the things that he recently showed off was an amazing card. It was a 2003 LeBron James that on the back had Michael Jordan printed on the back of it. And it drew a lot of enthusiasm within both sides of the hobby. And you wonder if people will start seeking misprints like those, and those will have that elevated platform.
Okay, that's cool. Karn, why don't you discuss in sports cards we have rookie cards. It's all the rage are rookie cards, of course. In comic books we have first appearances. How do those concepts how do they manifest themselves in Pokemon cards in terms of, are there rookie cards, are there first appearances, is it the same thing, and how important are they to collectors?
I think Max, you mentioned E4, so I'm on E4 here and there. I read the threads and the posts, and you start to see people mention like the Charizard rookie, or that's the Dragon Knight rookie. So that term is starting to seep into the Pokemon market. So it's being used, and I think it's going to stick as like that's the rookie of that character, which is cool. I like that, and so I think that sticks. And I think what you're seeing also is like an aspect of like 90s inserts with basketball collectors. Basketball collectors right now want to go for these rare 90s inserts that no one can find, that are super scarce, that are incredibly rare. And I think that cross-pollination in Pokemon is Pokemon trophy cards. Those are kind of like the 90s insert cards. And what those cards are essentially in 96 and to this day, which inserts are still available in sports cards to this day, but the 96 early 90s trophy cards were given out to winners of tournaments, and they're unique artworks. They're incredibly scarce. They came from Japan, and they have this like historical quality to it. So I think those are like the 90s inserts. There's the Jordan PNG equivalent, which is like the Pikachu Illustrator that I talked about before. Then there's something like the Super Secret Battle, which is like the Jordan game jersey auto. So there's cross pollination there as well. And I think what Pokemon might do in the future, maybe serial numbered cards. That'd be cool. I think that would be a big hit in the Pokemon market, just because it gives that collector base something to collect that is scarce and hard to find. And then also, we were talking earlier, maybe Pokemon Company comes out with a super premium product, maybe a one card pack or a one card box that you can chase some amazing hits. That'd be cool. I'd be interested in seeing something like that down the line.
So trophy cards are in fact trophies for winning a tournament, a game tournament. That's really cool, especially when you need to maybe go to the source, you go to the event to actually procure these for yourself. That's really interesting. The other thing I want to mention is that in terms of rookie cards, as a sports guy, we look for that. We look for how to find the earliest or the most valuable card of a subject matter, being a Pokemon, a pocket monster, and so to me, I'm not surprised that on E4, something I've never heard of until tonight, being a community of Pokemon enthusiasts, that they're starting to see this language come in, the rookie card collector, because hey, rookie, there's no rookies really. They're not. Well, maybe there are. Maybe they are a rookie when they first come out, but they're not playing in any professional league or anything like that. Although maybe Pokemon is a professional game for monsters. I don't know. But, it's just cool that we, sports people, we're drawn to what we understand. We try to find similarities so we can understand it better. So collecting first appearances or renaming those as rookie cards makes a lot of sense to me, just as an amateur enthusiast, I guess, if you will. The next one, and hold on, I just got to check something here quickly. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about within this topic is the whole thing about parallels. I mean, parallels are and we did already touch on it, so we don't have to spend any real time on this, but we have all sorts of parallels in sports cards, whether it's Panini Prism with a multitude of parallels, or O-Pee-Chee Platinum for hockey, lots of parallels. In Pokemon, we do see some of that as well. Sometimes it's like, first edition versus shadowless versus unlimited. But are we seeing other sorts of parallels in Pokemon, modern Pokemon, that maybe they started doing this because they're seeing what's happening in sports cards? Is that even a possibility that's what is driving some of the direction that the structure of their sets have taken?
Yeah, I think in the new product, you're seeing a lot of parallels that wasn't apparent in former Pokemon products. So you're seeing like the VMAX Charizard has four different cards now, and there's a fifth one being released with the same image, but different pattern on the foil. That's completely like how Panini Prism is in basketball. So there's a rainbow version, there's a shiny version, there's a base version, then there's a new shiny rainbow version. So you're getting these parallels of these cards, and I'm interested in it. I think I'm going to get each one, and it's going to be like a collection of having those 5 Charizards. So I think that's kind of what's happening right now.
Anything, Corey, anything you want to add to that?
Not much other except that I'm so excited to see what they release next year for the 25th anniversary. I think there's going to be some really cool sets. I love that idea, Karn, to potentially see serial numbered sets, serial numbered cards. That would be so cool.
Yeah, we talked about, Karn and I think talked about super premium sets in Pokemon, and I mean, we see it in sports cards. Is that coming in Pokemon? Well, you got to think it will eventually. I mean, they may not want to cater their core product to the collector/investor and keep it more for the player/collector. And I got collector in both of those groups, right? But if they do want to appeal to the investor collector, doing something like that, which works very well in sports cards, might be their inroad into a whole new revenue stream or a whole new customer base, which would be pretty cool. I want to point out to you guys that Boston Irv had to leave, but he did follow all of us on Instagram, and he has No Limits Cards on Instagram. So if you see he followed you, you can follow him back. Dex Flow, Charizard is a legend, but Jeremy is legendary. I don't know about that, man. Who dresses up as a dork on Halloween except me, right? Just me. So I don't know about that, but I'll take it. Nice comment. Thank you very much, Dex. Bromf jumps in. He says, do you think the rarities of full art / hyper rares / rainbow rares will hold any weight as investments for the future, or would it just be for the popular characters only? Well, this is great because this ties into the parallel discussion we just had. Karn, you're the modern guy. Why don't you take Bromf's question here for us?
Yeah, I think to keep the topic the same, I think there's prospecting available in modern stats. There's a lot of characters that are being voted on by children today that are considered to be the most popular. But if you go look on eBay sold prices, they're also one of the cheapest right now. So if you want to prospect, you pick up one of those guys. Like we were mentioning earlier, Greninja got voted the most popular Pokemon like 3 times in Japan and in North America. So only $100, maybe something down the line to consider. But then there's also, the investable Charizards and all that. I think that's entirely a pop report play if you're looking at it in an investment perspective. If the pop report gets too high, then it's just not going to have that value there because there's not going to be the price support for it. But if it stays how it is right now, I am looking into the trends that with like a hidden base Charizard, which is what I think is the modern iconic set. BGS 10s, I think, are the buys right now. There's about 10 BGS 10s getting graded per month. When does that stop? I think that's the question. If it stops in a year or so, yeah, it's investable. If it never stops, then no, it's not. So we'll see.
Okay, so then we do got to kind of wind this down pretty quick here, guys. But there's one more thing I definitely want to chat about, which is the potential for rising populations in terms of pop reports with the grading companies for these cards. Not only for the unlimited, which it would seem there's maybe unlimited room for growth of the populations just by virtue of that name, but also for first edition stuff. Like how many of these cards are sitting in binders of college students' parents' houses with stacks of Charizards and Blastoids and Venusaurs and Pikachus and all these guys, stacks of them, 3 per pocket or 4 per pocket on a 9 pocket sheet. I mean, is there a lot of that? And right now, with the rising prices that we've seen in the last 6 months, and we know about the backlogs of the grading companies, how many, and I know I'm not looking for an answer, but how many of these cards are sitting at Beckett and PSA just waiting to be slabbed, and those pop reports are just waiting to tick up and up and up as each of these make their way through the grading process. So Corey, I think we were chatting about this. Why don't you speak to this first?
Happy to. Karn, I would say that you and I probably both know plenty of collectors that have recently sent in hundreds of unlimited cards, seeing those values rise. There are so many people that have unlimited, very high quality cards sitting in binders or top loaders that they've sent off and are in the queue. So we'll just see those pops continue to rise. I have no doubt about that. When it comes to first edition, though, we haven't seen a PSA 10 Charizard added to the pop report, Karn, maybe, and within a few 2-3 years, correct? And so there already has been a push. The value has been there for Charizards for quite a while now. Gary Haas, he's known as King Pokemon, he showed up on Pawn Stars offering Charizards for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that got a lot of attention. It's the second ever highest viewed Pawn Stars video ever. So ever since that news started to ripple years ago, people have been submitting Charizards. We might see, sure, some come up, but with 120 pop on first edition base, even if it went to, I don't know, 140, 150, which it's hard to imagine that happening. I can't imagine it really even changing the value.
What do you think, Karn? What do you think about the potential for these pops to go up?
Yeah, completely agree. I think unlimited, when we see sports card guys talk about it and there's going to be a price crash or something like that, I think when it does happen, this is where it's going to get pointed to, but it's literally just going to be unlimited base set. There is a lot of it, and there's a lot of it in binders that are in mint condition. PSA 10 copies, maybe not because the pops are low, but it's a population report play. Honestly, that's what it is. And I think unlimited base sets, there's just going to be a lot. So,
yeah. Okay. So guys, we're not wrapping up quite yet, but very soon. So I want to let everybody know that's watching in 24 minutes from now. So at 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific, or what is 10:30 my time in the Mountain Standard Time Zone, I'm going to be coming back with a brand new broadcast. We call it After Hours. It's the late night show. It's the after party. I'll be back. Corey's going to be joining me again, and Ralph, another Pokemon guy, is going to join me. Corey, actually, you got in right on time, so no pressure. You don't have to if you don't have to if you don't want to. But here are some of the topics that we're gonna address on the After Hours show. One of them is like all this money that's coming in, and all these people that are selling cards. Where is this money going? What are some of these younger Pokemon veteran collectors who've like gotten rich lately? Where are they putting their new money? And another thing we're going to talk about is kind of will the nostalgia for this be there in 20 years? And what are some of the factors that are involved with that, or in terms of how we're going to feel about that, what we think. So we're going to talk about those. But before we go on to the next episode, or before we close this one down and we come back with After Hours in about 25 minutes, I want to pop up Uncle Vinny's question, and it was not asked yet, but I think it's a great question. He says, what are your thoughts of a Topps-like company creating another non-playing card like the early Topps Chromes of the 2000s? So I don't know who's best to answer this one. So put up a hand, Karn or Corey, if you want to take this one first. I don't have an answer, but I would think if the licensing is made available, that why wouldn't you capitalize on the number one IP brand in the world? So, Karn, you want to jump in?
Yeah, actually, some of my favorite Pokemon cards is I've never even posted them on my Instagram because I don't even want to share how much I like them. But the Topps Chrome cards are some of my favorite cards, like the Techno Parallel. There's parallels involved, just like sports cards, Techno, Spectra, Silver Prism type one. I think those cards are awesome. So I think if something like that comes out today, say if Panini came out with a Pokemon set, they'd come out with like 20 parallels of like Charizard, and I think I would collect them all, honestly. So I think that would be really cool. I don't think it's going to happen because the IP and the licensing fees are probably astronomical, and they probably don't want to confuse the base. But yeah, I love those type of cards.
So So we don't. So again, it comes down to licensing. So we don't know what the chances are of it happening, but it would be cool. We agree on that. Corey, anything to add to that at all?
No, I agree. I think, that Panini has its fans, and then it has people who would prefer it stick with, I think, the Pokemon Company due to the purity of it. So some people shudder to hear that question posed. I think there's others of us that are just like, no, they're going to make cool cards, and we'll continue to collect them.
Yeah, Topps Chrome always sounds cool and always is cool, right? When we've seen that, and we still pine for Topps Chrome cards today. There was some great rookies that came out during that era. So the pre-Panini era, I guess you could call it now. So okay, guys. Well, this was a lot of fun. Joe makes a nice comment. Bravo, great exploration of an emerging force. Thanks to Jeremy and the wonderful guest. Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate that. So okay, guys. We're going to wind this up now. And like I just said, I'll be back. We'll be back in a brand new broadcast. So just go to the YouTube channel, Sports Cards Live. The thumbnail should be there maybe right now, but we'll be hitting the go live button in about 20 minutes. And I'm expecting Corey to join me, and Ralph will be joining. Ralph is also known as Wraparound Cards on Instagram. He'll be joining me as well. Karn, it's been awesome having you again. I think it's your third time on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, you're a veteran.
It was a great discussion, and I appreciate being here and enjoy the after hour show.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining, for your knowledge, for your tips along the way. I greatly appreciate it. Corey, I almost feel like this is your coming out on a live stream here. You're well known on Instagram by your handle, but I think I'm honored to have you as your first live experience on YouTube. I'm hoping is right now, if I'm not wrong. So I'm honored to have that role in your hobby experience.
Jeremy, whether you call it my first appearance or my rookie appearance, I absolutely loved it. And Karn, it's an honor to be on a panel with you, man, as a Pokemon guru out there. And this has just been a blast. So thank you very much.
Okay, guys, thanks a lot. Thanks everybody watching. Again, hit that thumbs up button on the YouTube channel for the video. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I always greatly appreciate that. Ziggy, no, great show. Thank you. Thank you, Ziggy, for tuning in. Foul 5 ball. Great to see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Uncle Vinny. Great to have you, and thank you too. Thanks, everybody. You guys, if you stay right there for 1 second, I'm going to end this. Everybody else, we'll see you in about 19 minutes on After Hours, where I do have, if you weren't here at the beginning, my US mailing address shipped these up to me. I got these. I haven't opened them yet. They're wrapped in cellophane. They came in a big box with bubble wrap and all that, but this is what I got. I think I'm going to open these live on After Hours soon. So come check that out. We will see you all then, and thanks for tuning in.